Welcome back to 94.7 The Pulse, the voice for Geelong for Grooves on the Record. Today with me, myself, Liam Hare, and we could be delivering today for the very first interview for our guest we have here. If you love the fantastic one-hit wonder that somehow gets stayed in your head over time, then you'll recognize this one. She co-founded Timbuk 3 with her then at the time husband Patrick MacDonald in the early 80s and provided an earworm of a hit from their debut record, Greetings from Timbuk 3 1986, being The Future So Bright, I've Gotta Wear Shades, which peaked at number 18 here in Australia. And the album itself, Greetings from Timbuk 3, peaked at number 86. Following the band's split, she's gone solo with a few solo efforts under her name, producing and engineering work around the Austin area, while still playing, helping form a very crucial initiative for indie artists and small community radio stations like ours, and even across two countries in Germany and the USA, as I've been informed before this interview. Please welcome to Grooves on the Records, Barbara Koyman. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you today?
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. I've woken up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning to do this, so very big commitments for me. But
Oh,
that's it. That's interview business for you.
well, I thank you for making that compromise of getting up so early. I actually love 4:30 in the morning myself. That's before the traffic heats up and before the birds start singing, and it seems to be a very peaceful and open, creative time.
Lovely. Let's get back to the beginning for you. What were your earliest musical influences growing up, and what led you to pick up the guitar and starting to write music?
Oh, well, I was influenced by politics from very early on and I saw in the 60s that it was possible through the power of music to be able to have an influence on, you know, giving peace a chance, for example, instead of just things that were happening that were yeah, and so I wanted to learn to play the guitar ever since I was 10 years old. I got my first guitar. My parents bought me a from Sears and Roebuck, a little acoustic guitar with steel strings, and I got started with G, C, and D, and the rest is history.
Absolutely wonderful. Was there any particular records that you recall in your collection at the time that helped spark said interest besides politics, and what was fascinating to you about them in a musical sense?
Well, one of my favorite artists has been J.J. Cale. I love his music. I love the grooves that he played. They were so mesmerizing and just fascinating for me his songs. Yeah, everything about him was wonderful. And whenever I hear his music, I just feel like I'm in some kind of a beautiful zone, and I could listen to him for hours on end.
Fantastic. Getting into the start of Timbuk 3, first off, how did such a name come about? Did you read it somewhere, or was it something that came out of the blue that yourself and Pat ran with it?
Well, there was a friend of Pat's who actually had made a comment to another friend of his that when he dies, you'd be able to find him in Timbuk 3 or someplace off the wall. And so that was a suggested name for this band. And we liked it because there was two of us in the band, Timbuk 2, but we recorded our bass and drums onto cassettes and played them on our boombox. So we had a third member. And so Timbuk 3 was what we decided upon.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Was there ever an unofficial name for said boombox that you ever came up with just on spot?
Actually, no, not that I recall. No, it was just our boombox, and we carried it around with. It was a big boombox, not really huge, but it had depth and good bass response. That was important because it was bass and drums for us, whether we were playing on the street or then later in clubs through the stereo outputs that it had.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. The first two records, maybe going to the third one as well, was all about that sort of lineup where you were talking about with the boombox and yourself and Patrick. What was, I guess, to you, what was so unique about that, I guess, compared to your contemporaries of that era?
Well, I think what was unique about it was that basically we had a band in Wisconsin that we were playing in together, and we decided that after so many years, it was really challenging in that state in particular to be able to create a career from performing music that was self-written, self-created, and not just cover bands go anywhere, but artists are more challenged by finding places to play. And so we decided we wanted to move to either Austin, Texas, or New Orleans. And we didn't want to sacrifice the sound of our music that we created with our band. So we came up with the idea of using an old, well, they're old now, but recording bass and drums on a 4-track cassette deck, and then mixing that down to stereo and playing that, having that on our boombox. We actually tried that. We said, well, let's try this. Let's take our acoustic guitars and our boombox with these tracks, and let's go to New York City, because if we can make it there, we can make it anywhere, and just play on the street and see what would happen. And what happened was that we would get these little crowds of people gathered around us, and they would get bigger and bigger, and people really loved this acoustic music with a boombox sound, and our crowds got so big that the police would always come and break them up. We were blocking traffic or blocking the sidewalk, move on, move on. But that was enough success to give us the good feeling to let's take it somewhere. And we started off in Austin, Texas, and never left.
Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful place to be. I actually have an Astros t-shirt on, so representing a bit of Texas. Wonderful. What was the scene like when you arrived?
The scene like when we arrived was very acoustic, very songwriter friendly, a lot of blues, Stevie Ray Vaughan and the Thunderbirds. But when we actually arrived, the first night we arrived, we drove down in our van. We had 2 bass speakers in the back and a little PA and a mattress on the speakers, so one of us could sleep and one of us could drive. And we went to a open mic at Silk Creek Saloon, and there we met for the first time. The very first person we met was a gentleman named Blaze Foley, and Blaze was a local character, fabulous songwriter, unsuccessful as we all were. And he saw us walking in with our guitars as he was walking out, and he turned around, went back in, and he was our first true friend in the music scene. I mean, and fellow artist. And that week, he brought friends to our first show at a little club called the Austin Outhouse, and then he introduced us to Townes Van Zandt, who was playing at another club called Liberty Lunch. This was all in the early 80s or mid 80s, like say 84, 85. And also to Larry Monroe, a very beloved and renowned DJ on a local radio station, KUT, who was directly responsible for giving a lot of artists our first break, which is why radio is so special to me, so dear to my heart, because without that first airplay that you can build a career upon, you don't really get any traction anywhere out besides your local scene. And so Larry heard us and heard our music. And it was because of his airplay of some old albums we had recorded in Madison, Wisconsin, where we had lived before. That was enough of a success for us to decide we're moving to Austin. And so we did. Went back to Madison, packed up, and came back.
Absolutely fantastic. And as it's mentioned, you spent 9 months before IRS would eventually contact you to start recording Greetings from Timbuk 3. How did you feel? Sort of like, well, we've only been here for like nearly less than a year, and now we're getting signed up to a major label to record our first album.
Well, yeah, it wasn't quite like that. We were just really excited to take everything step by step. And we heard that a gentleman who was going to produce a show on MTV called The Cutting Edge, was coming to Austin, scouting talent. And we thought, oh, we have to be on that show, just like every other band in Austin was saying, we have to be on that show. So it was like a big scramble to quickly find a show the weekend that that gentleman was there. But we did. We found a little bar on the outskirts of 6th Street, the very end, where live music wasn't really performed there, but we had our own PA. So the club allowed us to set up the PA. We made a little flyer that featured our boombox on it. And we said, as seen on MTV, the boombox, of course, not us, and passed it around. And just by chance, I wanted to stop by a local music industry person's office in case he saw this MTV producer and he would invite him to our show. Luckily, in that moment that I knocked on his door, that producer happened to be in his office. And I gave him the flyer and said, we're playing tomorrow night at Mid-City Roadhouse. Would you please come to our show? And he said, of course I will. And at that moment, not very many people had ever even heard of Timbuk 3. We were so new on the scene that even the chief music critic for the Austin Chronicle, the really big newspaper here, the cultural scene newspaper, had never heard of us. And he was the man who was giving this producer a tour of the Austin music scene. And when Carl Grasso said, I want to go see Timbuk 3 first. And he said, Timbuk who? Timbuk 3. They're playing at the Mid-City Roadhouse. That's no club to go to. Well, that's where I want to start off. And so begrudgingly, the music critic in Austin, who had never heard of us, brought the producer from MTV to our show. And we were playing 3 sets that night. So the music critic sat there kind of grumpy, but the producer was like, wow, this is cool. And he even came back alone and caught our 3rd set and asked us that night to be on the show. So that was the very start of our career. And we were so excited that we got invited to play on that show. We thought, oh, this is our big break. And we didn't sleep at all that night. But had I not had the courage to knock on that door, nothing would have ever happened. So I just say to people, follow your heart, follow your instinct, and go for it.
Absolutely fantastic. As we were mentioning before recording the start of the episode, I'm probably the only person to address the 40th anniversary of Greetings from Timbuk 3 for next year. Looking back on the album 40 Years On, knowing the impact with the giant hit, Future's So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades, how do you feel about it now, nearly going on 40?
Well, I feel excited about it because that was a song that became quite popular, but it was also a song that was misunderstood by the masses. You know, people hear that, oh, Future's so bright, I got to wear shades. They want to put on sunglasses, dance around. The rhythm's, very great, fast moving, poppy. But it was actually a song about, the consequences of studying nuclear science, with the end result being catastrophic in our world. The threat of, nuclear bombs, the threats of, nuclear power and what to do with all that nuclear waste that never goes away. It's like we need to consider the consequences of what we want to engage our lives with, and not just how much money we're going to make from a career in nuclear science. So it was a little tongue-in-cheek. Most people missed out on that, but a few people got it and brought attention to that. But like many artists who address certain issues through art or culture, that's not really wanted by people who make a lot of money with stuff like that. So, we were a one-hit wonder band, like you said earlier, which I think that's just fine because, we had our success, we had some fun. I still play music. I love playing music. It's still my passion, even though there's not a lot of opportunities for me to travel and promote the music I'm playing. I think it's just wonderful to be able to pick up a guitar and play my heart out any day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And I guess for me, another great song that kind of fits into a political scene, and boy, it's aged so well. Just Another Movie, which is kind of like about the presidential political race and what goes on behind the scenes to keep prying eyes away from what's the truth about what's going on as well, if I'm getting that correct.
Well, I think you are getting that correct. As a matter of fact, this is the 40th anniversary of the first release, the Greetings from Timbuk 3, with A Future So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades. But 20 years ago, I recorded a solo album, just me and a guitar. I did a cover version of some of my favorite songs from the Timbuk 3 catalog, recorded on the 4th of July. And that was 20 years ago this year. And so we're actually having the 20th anniversary of the recording of Undercover, songs from Timbuk 3, that I released only to radio stations as an introduction to the inspired challenge of keeping community radio in the communities, keeping them supported, keeping them funded, realizing that there would be threats to the federal funding, and we needed to address alternative funding strategies for these non-commercial organizations because they are so special. They give artists in their hometowns their first break. They are there for any emergency that happens. Like, for instance, I was in San Francisco when the great earthquake, rocked the city back in the mid 80s. Happened to be in town that day for a show. It got canceled. The earthquake was at 5:30. The city was shut down, no power, no lights. But radio stations have generators and they have access to being able to broadcast through their towers, through these generators. And people have radios in their car. And so people were tuning in to their favorite local public radio station that was playing great music, like a whole lot of shaking going on and all sorts of wonderful things. And that was the only thing that kept going through the night was these radio stations and the headlights from cars, and everything else was totally blacked out. Nobody knew if it was safe to go back into a house or a hotel room. There was no gas stations where you could pump gas. You couldn't go anywhere. It was total dark chaos, but for the sake of these radio stations that kept us going through the night and kept us all safe and kept us all happy in this huge experience that happened without them, we would have all been terrified of what to do and not have any idea. So hats off to radio stations. May they always be here for us.
Thank you very much. I feel honored as a presenter on two of them, actually, not here in Geelong, but also in Melbourne as well for public access community radio. A song like Future So Bright, Gotta Wear Shades has obviously been sort of proposed to be used in ads well over the years, and you and Pat have made it clear and blocked and rejected every single deal it's been used for. What made you come to this decision to keep it out of commercials?
Well, once a song is associated with a commercial product, then the meaning of that song is lost because they just take the jingle or the part that sells the product, and then you're associated with a product or an organization. And to me, I like to say it's like selling your integrity. If you are an artist and your music is there to make an impact on the consciousness of the listener, then if you connect it with, some trucks or the telephone company or, whatever company that would make an offer, then the true impact of what The Future So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades would be lost forever. And I I like to say integrity is like virginity. Once it's gone, it's gone. And so to me, that integrity is worth more than money can buy. And so I've always said no, personally, to associating my music with commercial products.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I love the integrity and love the values after all these years later. Touring across the world with as in the band, you performed with some spectacular names, including Sting, Bob Dylan, to name a few. What was it like sharing the stage with these names? And to follow up on that question after that one, what places from these touring days have a special place in your memory?
Well, to be honest with you, we shared the stage, but for most of those, we were like an opening act, and then the main artist would come on. So in sharing the stage, it was like us first, them second. But when you really share the stage is when you're performing a benefit concert with multiple artists. That is more like a sharing of the stage, a sharing of the music. And to me, the most important shows Timbuk 3 did was these benefit concerts that we did up in up in South Dakota. The first one was for the Pine Ridge Reservation. We were invited to play along with many other really well-known artists, a benefit concert for the Lakota College and for Keeley Radio and for the health center on the reservation. And then later we did another benefit on the other side of South Dakota for another Indian reservation with a lot of the similar artists, people like Neil Young, Jackson Brown, John Denver was there, just a lot of people who with their musical expression and their artistic expression also are willing to make a stand, not just behind a mic stand, but also share the wealth of our solidarity and our talent and our music to bring some more compassion into the world.
Absolutely lovely. With the Austin City Limits Festival just come and gone recently in the Texas area, available online is footage of the band's performance when it came to a TV show as such. How did you feel at the time knowing that you were part of such a unique show like that? And why do you think it's so important to the local scene in Austin?
Are you talking about Austin City Limits, the show, or the? Yeah, well, Austin City Limits is a fabulous public television show produced by the local public station here in Austin, or when we were here, and it's like a wonderful historical archive of talented songwriters throughout the years. To be a part of the Austin music scene, I have to say, is an honor and a pleasure. And I have to go back full circle to the lovely Blaze Foley, who was our first and dearest friend in the Austin music scene. He passed away early, very sad. We only knew him for about 4 years. He would come home with us at night after our shows. He would sit on the couch with the babysitter after we had gone to sleep. and when she had to go home, he would just sleep on our couch. And it was a very beautiful experience. And now, after Blaze is gone, so many people have been recording his songs and covering them. They've even produced a movie about him that I think Ethan Hawke produced the film and had some wonderful actors in. And so even though for me, it was like one of the saddest days of my life to lose this very special friend and not hear him perform these songs or not share the stage with Blaze at the Austin Outhouse, that was like, wow, this is heaven. I can still hear his music, and sometimes I'll happen to be walking down the street and I'll hear some band playing one of his songs and it brings tears to my eyes. And it feels good to be home in Austin, where I lived for 30 years and was a part of this music scene.
Beautiful. Do you do much music when you're overseas in Germany, or does that really stay in America?
Well, like I said, I haven't been performing for a long time. I'm not a fan of social media. And so if you're not engaged with social media, it's hard to, for other people to take you seriously as far as booking shows, or, like artists are supposed to do not only like write their songs and rehearse them and practice them and be able to play them from their heart in a professional manner with strings tuned. And there's so much that goes into just being an artist, but then to have to market yourself. And I mean, there are people who do an excellent job at that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But some artists prefer to, well, let's just say that if you are an artist that is willing to take a stand through your music, you're also willing to take a stand through your social media. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's a record of posts and commentary that, or commentary. Sorry, I get sometimes confused between German and English these days. But that can be challenging, and I also don't like about social media how brutal it can be for people to use our images and then connect them with other images. And it's devastating to see people that are pure of heart or pure of intention be brutalized in ways like that on a massive scale. And so I prefer just to not be on social media, and I play music for myself, my friends around the dinner table, and I sing to the cows that live on the farm behind our house. Or, I know that sounds crazy, but it's a very happy and peaceful life. But I came back to Austin simply because I wanted to reconnect with my friends in the music industry. And some people know that over the years, we've been developing a new system of support for community radio stations, and that now is the time to bring that out. And so that's why I'm here. I'm enjoying going around town, listening to my friends play. And I think I'll probably even sit in a few guest spots here or there while I'm here.
Absolutely fantastic. That leads very nicely into the project that you formed many moons ago in the early thousands, which is still, obviously, as you say, going very strong today. Artists for Media Diversity, I think, is very, very important in a day and age like this. What was the mission statement when you initially came up with the idea for Artists for Media Diversity?
Well, basically, that if media is consolidated to just a few major carriers, then the representation of different aspects of a story would not have the chance to be heard. And if you're only hearing one main story all the time of just one opinion, but there's another opinion that might have something else to convey, if we're not able to listen to both sides or both opinions on the same issue, how are we able to make a conscious choice that resonates individually with our own hearts? And so to have diversity in media, which means corporate media, non-corporate media or non-commercial media, journalism that that reflects the opinions of the people who own the newspapers or the television stations, or the journalism that represents the many voices of the people all around the world who are affected by the policies we make as a society through our tax dollars funding programs that are presented on the world stage to uh, that affect us all. And so diversity is actually a very beautiful thing. It's not only with media diversity, but it's through cultural diversity. It's through diversity of peoples. You know, we're one world, but we have many faces, many skin colors, many hair colors, many ages. If we only had only the one age group and the one skin color and the one hairstyle that we want to reflect, well, then that's a very limited group. And that group will go into extinction very quickly because there's no diversity to support it. So diversity in all of its aspects, whether it's the animal kingdom or whether it's the human race or whether it's the plants that support us with all their nutritional aspects, or salt water and sweet water. We need all of these to lead a healthy and balanced life in all of its aspects. And as an artist, knowing how important our community media is, I wanted to create me and the people that we worked together with, we wanted to provide a platform where artists could support the diversity in media, the diversity in communities, the diversity of public voices around the world, but starting here in the United States.
Absolutely wonderful. And I love the organization. I'm so thankful being a part of community radio, especially, well, I'm not sure if we have something equivalent here in Australia, but definitely something for America, that they have something in place should the worst of the worst happen.
Just a second. I have to say that that organization existed for about 10 years, and we didn't have enough financial support, or, I mean, it was just very challenging. We ended up having to close the organization. But the work that we did was known by certain people, and that's why I'm back here, is to reopen a new organization that supports diversity in media the way we established about in 10, 15 years ago. So that work will carry on. And I will let you know when we launch that. It could be really soon, but that's not something we can really talk about right now. But I just wanted to make sure that if people were looking for artists for media diversity, they're not really going to find it, but soon there will be an alternative.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. I had to use the old Wayback Machine just to even research into what it was all about. So as you said, no longer available on the web, but that is all right. And I guess in some spirit, how can stations like ours here in Geelong sort of take on from that inspiration of what you said at 10, 15 years ago to help achieve with our issues, because we're sort of off, at least with our own license for our station. So what can we do, I guess, on our end that was sort of similar to what you achieved many moons ago?
Well, I think it's just really important to be responsive to the community where you live, become aware of what the community's needs are, and be able to address them with different voices so that the community is supported. Also, culturally, if there are artists from your community and from Australia that you like or that represent these values in your community, you can invite them to come and play a concert somewhere at a local venue. It could be a coffee house, it could be a small club, it could be a school auditorium, whatever is appropriate, and then bring the community together with live music, because live music is such an attractive force in and of itself. Live music, I consider, people ask me, what's your favorite music? And I say live music, because it's living music. It's living within the community, and that brings people out from the isolation of their computers and their social media and, whatever that they're working on, and brings them into a public place where they can celebrate community together and find shared interests without needing to like everything on the computer, but like what we're building together as a community. And then we have from one community, another community that's a little bit farther, and another community that's a little bit farther. And so we have this beautiful web of community. And with something like that, it creates a network of places where touring artists who also care about community can go from one city or one town or one village to another and be able to share live music, bring the community out from isolation, have a beautiful experience, and continue that process. And that will bring live music to the forefront of a community, and also it supports the artists, and the artists support the stations, and the community and artists and stations support each other. That's the core value of what we're undertaking here in Austin today, why I'm here in Austin and not in Germany, because hopefully within a month or so, you'll start to hear a little bit more about that. And I will contact you right away, Liam, because I see that you are a trendsetter and in bringing me my first interview in Australia after 40 years to the public.
Yes, like I said, I'm absolutely honored. Like, we had a show here in Australia which was all about Musical Countdown, and I pondered to myself, why didn't Molly Meldrum get in contact with you and Patrick back in the day for Humdrum to talk about, I guess, your unique lens in music? But here we are 40 years later, and I guess I'm kind of filling in that gap. Better late than never, I guess.
Well, I do have to say that my memory is also 40 years old, and perhaps we did some interviews with Australian radio, but I've never been to Australia, and that's a continent that I've always wanted to come to. So, we never know. Maybe we'll get to meet each other someday. I would really love that.
Likewise, if you could send a message to our community radio listeners on the Pulse, and certainly our wonderful volunteer team who day in, day out do absolutely a lot to keep the lights on, what would you tell them about the power that we hold on our little station, and why is it so important today's day and age when our community radios are literally can be on the edge of being funded or defunded or have their sort of funding taken away from them, especially like NPR and sort of all the major broadcastings in America?
Well, I would say first and foremost, you need to have somebody who is in a leadership position of your station, who knows the rules and regulations, so that you adhere to those very special rules and regulations in concerns to broadcast media. And I want to say volunteers are the heart and soul of community radio. And the more volunteers, the more you can share the load. It's like fundraising is a very challenging thing to be able to do. And that's why artists, through the power of music, we can help to create a new funding stream to support our community radio stations. But we also need our community radio stations to be able to broadcast this music in a way that is, within the rules and regulations of broadcast media. And we also need to spread the word through our own communities, and just know that it's more than just volunteering. It's like creating a sense of family that you can choose to be family with. And sometimes choosing members of a family of people that are very like-minded and love diversity, but also they share things in common. That is a very beautiful pattern to weave a quilt of many colors that can keep your community warm or provide you some shade when the sun is really hot.
Absolutely fantastic, and a great way to summarize it. We're all different ages, we're all different backgrounds, and it's absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you for doing this for 94.7 The Pulse, Geelong, and whether this be your very first interview for Australia or one of many, if memory strikes back, I'm glad to have filled in the gap one way or another.
Thank you, Liam. I really appreciate that.